More VFLs than a UT alumni chapter. Now, back to the Sports Source.
All right, welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Madisonville Marine, the biggest selection of makes and models and different types of boats, not just the brand names, not just the models of those brand names, but from Georgia to Nashville, nobody has a bigger selection of deck boats. You got them at one place. Pontoons, you got them over here. Fishing boats, you got them over here. Madisonville Marine, you got them all. So figure you and your family can figure out what kind of boat is right for you by standing in one spot and saying, well, I like these pontoons, and let's walk over here 10 feet and let's look at the deck boats. You can't do that elsewhere. Madisonville Marine, no better place to buy a boat. Right there, Highway 411 North in beautiful Madisonville. All right. Let's welcome in Josh Ward right down there. You can hear him Monday through Friday, noon to 3 on WNML. Josh, thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Sean.
And I have a tough question for you to start with. Welcome to the panel.
All right.
Who's going to be gone in the assistant coaches? Let's go ahead and put up a list in terms of the Vols assistants. And we already know that Jimmy Brumbaugh is gone and will have to be replaced. But there are your assistant coaches, Josh. Which of these guys are most likely coaching their final home game at Neyland Stadium sideline on Saturday, in your opinion? For one reason or another.
Can I just say yes? Does that cover me here for a second? Well, I think the first position you wonder about is the quarterback position and how that's been developed. You can come back to the recruiting side of things too, but the guys that they've had, how they've developed, the decisions they've made. So Chris Weinke as the quarterback's coach the last couple of seasons, I wonder there. The next question I would ask is, how does Jeremy Pruitt evaluate his defensive hires? We already know how he evaluated his hire on the defensive line. He's already fired Jimmy Brumbaugh. But what does he see through the rest of the staff? I know a lot of the focus is on offense, and that's why I started at quarterback. But I'm curious with Jeremy Pruitt, the defensive coach, how he evaluates the defensive side of the ball. So I think the easiest answer would be I would expect multiple changes, but also expect maybe something unexpected. Remember on signing day in February, Jeremy Pruitt was bragging about all the coaches deciding to stay. And then the door opened, a bunch of coaches decided to leave. So you could be surprised here. I wonder, does somebody like T. Martin look for an opportunity to help him in his career? He was linked to the South Alabama job as a head coach, and that's not happening for him. But do offers come that would cause a coach to unexpectedly leave the staff?
Well, do some of these assistants look and say, I can restart the clock somewhere else and get out of here because next year it is, at best, next year is a do-or-die year. You could have some of that. Sorry, so you mentioned quarterbacks. Weinke. I think Weinke's probably the most likely guy to be gone. Would there be any disagreements there? And here's the thing: I don't know Chris Weinke from Adam, so nothing personal. But just based on you're the quarterback's coach, quarterbacks haven't developed. That would seem to me to be the place that would go. Another one that I think hasn't improved in 3 years and should have, but he's best friends with the head coach, is Will Friend. I think if there's anybody else, I don't know that you'd be talking about I think you'd be talking more about the offensive line coach. So if it's me, those are the two areas I'm looking at.
I would also look at your linebackers. I haven't seen the production and play there. Their weakness in pass coverage, that's clearly a thing there. You have some guys that are supposedly really talented, and are you getting the most out of that talent? Or do they still have those same weaknesses they had as freshmen and earlier? And so I would question that group as well and saying, are you getting what you need out of that?
Who's most likely to go, Jimmy?
Yeah, I think I'm with Will on the linebacker situation. I don't like what they've done. And part of that probably would go back, I would think, some to evaluation. We've heard Jeremy Pruitt say he wants like a 4-2 linebacker. Well, one tool they don't have in that box is pass coverage. And why? Is that because you have not recruited linebackers who are good at that? I just don't see it at that position. So I think that's a concern. I agree with quarterback and offensive line underachieving, but I would also throw the linebackers in that group as well.
Well, and talking more specifically about Brian Niedermeyer, someone who just moved to that position. I mean, that's your inside linebackers coach.
Yeah.
So,
And that comes back to the recruiting versus coaching conversation.
And to me, that's something we talked about last offseason when they made the move to go from Tracy Rocker, and part of the reason was reportedly they weren't as happy with him as a recruiter. Specifically asked on this question, on this show, and asked you, is there a danger in getting too focused on recruiting and not enough on coaching? I am the opposite. Everybody will tell you it's Jimmy's and Joe's, not X's and O's. I don't buy that. I don't want that. That's great. There are a lot of guys out there who can go and recruit. Terrific. If everybody's got the same team, I want a guy who can out-coach your team. I want the IROC champion.
I want both.
Yeah, well, yeah, but here's the thing: I'd rather have a guy that can get the most out of minimum.
Right.
I'm not saying get a guy who can't recruit
Because you're not going to hit on every recruit.
But I'm hiring coaches. You better be able to coach, and I'll worry about your recruiting second. That's the way I would handle it.
Yeah, you have to have a mix, in my opinion. It's just like you have to have a team of 5 stars, 4 stars, 3 stars. You got to have a mix to put together a good team. I think in the kind of recruiting and coaching level, you have to have some really good coaches. You have to have some really good recruiters. And so, but if you go too far to one side,
Yes.
your team is going to suffer. And I think this team moved too far to the Jimmys and Joes, let's just get more talent in here.
Yep.
And then they looked around and went, well, who coaches that? Who coaches that? And you look at the production and go, it's a lot of guys that haven't played or any experience at a high level of football. I mean, that are trying to coach guys, teach them stuff that are very nuanced and minor things that if you haven't done it or hadn't been around somebody that's done it, it's hard to know what to do.
Yeah, I mean, how much has Ossavet worked with tight ends in the past? I mean, you had David Ubben did an exit interview with one of the guys who's leaving here that was talking about Jeremy Pruitt taking over the defensive line, and the player said, well, how much can he teach us? He's never played there. Okay, so that's part of it. Josh, I'll let you finish up this segment. You
Yeah,
started,
and that
you
was
finished.
very much the case on the defensive side. That's why I kind of led there, but it comes back to what does Jeremy Pruitt decide that he wants? They had veteran coaches that left and less experienced coaches on that side of the ball that came in. And by the way, they were brought in to take recruiting to a higher level, and at one point in the recruiting cycle, recruiting went to a higher level, but then they had to go play games, and the games haven't gone well, and recruiting has been affected.
Let me throw a quick one out here to Jimmy, very quick. Jim Chaney. Everybody always questions the offensive coordinator. Nobody ever likes the offensive coordinator until they're gone. You get somebody worse, and then you like the last guy. But with Jim Chaney, he came back here. He wanted to get to Tennessee. Loves Knoxville. Wants to stay here. Making $1.5 million. Is there any chance that Philip Fulmer allows Jeremy Pruitt to make a move there if he wants to? Is there any chance Jim Chaney says, "I want out of here"? Is there any chance Jim Chaney isn't back?
I'm gonna say it's a very slight chance that he will not be back. I believe he's coming back, and it sort of gets back to the same reason that I don't think you fire Pruitt. It's money. You're going to get rid of Chaney, and then you're going to have to pay $1.7 million, which is the last year of his contract, and then to replace him, how much you're going to have to pay to get that guy, and that guy's not coming for a one-year deal either.
Right.
So I'm going to say he will be back. A very small possibility that he won't.
Okay. When we come back, Josh didn't have to answer this question earlier. He will next. So will David Ubben. So will Sterling Hinton. What do they do with Jeremy Pruitt? I'll answer it too. Come on back to the Sports Source.